Okay, we're ready.
Okay, thanks for coming this morning. I'm a little overwhelmed by the number of you. I want to start out, this is our little keynote presentation. I want to start out just by getting kind of an idea where you guys are at with this type of device. Keynote is very similar to PowerPoint or the Google presentation tool. So I was going to do a survey, but I thought this is pretty informal. Surveys take too long. Can I just see with a show of hands, yes or no, have you, raise your hand if you, yes, have used either PowerPoint or some sort of similar presentational tool in your teaching at some point in time? Okay. And then the second question, have you ever created some sort of a, again, not necessarily Keynote, but some sort of a self-running presentation where the students could access it and look through your materials, either with your recorded voice or not? Okay, and then the last question is, do you have a YouTube or similar sort of account? Okay, so some of you who raised your hand for all three of those might be my resident experts who could maybe either add your own input or help out when it comes to work time. I really do hope that we have a little bit of time to work so that you can kind of get something up and running and playing with it. Please know that me and there's other people in the room, it sounds like Clint and Nicole both have quite a bit of experience with this type of thing too. So come back to us with questions. This is always the type of thing where when you go to create it, you're going to run into snags. I don't know where this button is. I don't know how to do this one little thing. Send an email. Ask us. I'm also, I think I'm going to create a video just...
Okay?
That's fine, I'm okay with that. I'm going to create a video so that anybody can access it later with this information. And I'll create the video using exactly the what I'm going to show you today. Keynote Basics, I'm going to run through this kind of quickly because again you'll be able to access it later. And I want to take you through so you kind of see the whole process. And then we can go back and wherever you're at, if you're ready to try creating one, that's fine. If you want a little bit more question and answer, we can do that. Keynote is very, very similar to PowerPoint. In fact, you can actually open up a PowerPoint in Keynote. The only reason I prefer Keynote is because I think it's easier to create the self-timed presentations. I think it's easier to create a presentation with my voice or with a soundtrack even. I can add in music. And then it's really super easy to export it as a video or to export it even as a PDF. So you could attach it to something so other people can view it without your being there. This is just the basics. I highlighted a couple buttons here, and in fact maybe I think when we're done I'll just share this document with you guys really quickly so that you can see, you'll have access to this. I just highlighted the basics of creating a slide, just like PowerPoint. You know, you create your slide, you type in some text. For anybody who if you're not familiar with a lot of the Mac stuff, Apple loves this inspector tool. It's in a lot of their programs, and that's where you go for your big menu. Your toolbox just has the basics, but your inspector tool is really important. That's where you get all the little options. Just like PowerPoint, it allows you to add in pictures, movies, and sounds. You can add in hyperlinks. You can select web pages and add those in. So just depending on where you're at with your level of comfort, you could create a presentation that just has text and your notes, or you could make it completely multimedia. And it's pretty easy to do. It really doesn't take too much. Most of it's like, oh, insert a movie. Great, done. As I said, soundtrack, I played around with PowerPoint, and you can do this in PowerPoint, but it's kind of a pain. It's really easy to add music to a presentation. Everyone have a little background music playing while you're presenting. And that I gave you, it's basically just the inspector and then this little button that shows up with the inspector, and it says, all you have to do is drag your file over. As I said, we'll get a chance to experiment in a second. You can, sorry. You can record your voice with a presentation, and all you do, and I'll show you this once I open up the thing, there's a button that says record. And as soon as you start recording, it pops up the presentation, and it starts recording the presentation. So I can have, if I were doing this in my classroom, I could actually simultaneously have my presentation playing and it's recording my voice. And then when I'm done, I click stop. And it's it. That's it. I can create it as a movie and push it out to my students. I know I'm flying, but like I said, we'll get to the modeling in a second. There is a way to set up an automatically playing presentation too, where I can tell it, I want it to go through the slides and I want it to go this fast. And if I have my different bullet points, it'll pull those up one at a time. And it'll just play on its own, so you could even put it up like in front of the room and it would just go. You could walk out. Or maybe not. Okay. And then finally at the end, we'll look at exporting. And that's a pretty quick and easy process. It's a share export. Okay, and I'm going to go back to where I'm going to actually have you open up Keynote right now, and we're going to go through this a little bit. First thing you're going to want to do is hit your launcher, Launchpad. Do you have that on your desktop? And if you have your Launchpad open, you should find Keynote on there. Do you see it? Please tell me no if you don't see it. Is it not on the Launchpad? Launchpad is that little rocket thing. Mike, you're not seeing it? Okay. It kind of looks like the little floaty, yeah, I guess. It is in applications too, but I find it harder to find because it's under the iWorks. It doesn't actually show up as Keynote.
See it. I had it. It's a little like orange. Here, push it that way. Did you click on this orange? No, the other one.
If it pops up to have you register, just say register later. You don't need to do that right now. And you don't ever have to register. Once you have Keynote open, I'd like you to go ahead and start a new file. So go to File, a New. And it gives you all sorts of different themes that you can choose from. You don't get the pictures, just the background. New file. So you'll want to pick a motif, for lack of a better word.
Ooh.
And then that'll allow you to open one. So just tell it how pretty you want to make it. Just like in PowerPoint, you can edit the background at any time. You can add images and change the color. Go all fancy. Okay. Once you've got that, it's pretty easy. You just click anywhere to start your presentation. It'll say double click to edit. You can actually okay, so notice that it only gives you one slide. First step, you want more slides. You're not going to have a presentation with one slide. So you have two options. If you look up in the upper left-hand corner, there's a little plus that says New. That just gives you a new slide. If you click on that, it gives you a new one. I want another slide. I'm just going to push that plus again.
It's orange. Come on.
Yes.
Okay. Just like in PowerPoint, you can move your slides around just by dragging them, clicking them, and pulling them. Click and drag. So I can move slide 1 down to the bottom. I can move my title slide 1 down. Now it's all messed up. Okay. Now, there are like a bazillion and 5 things you can do with a slide once you've created it, but I'm going to show you what I think is probably the most important thing if you were going to do a self-timed or a self-playing, and that is most people want those bullet points to show up one at a time. You don't usually want them all up there at once because there's usually, put the bullet point up, you talk it a little bit, next bullet point, talk a little, and that's how typical presentations go. To do that, you're going to want to be on the slide that you want to be working with and open the inspector. So your inspector button is right up there, and when you open that, that'll pop up. And this is like power piece. Okay. So if I want my bullets to pop up one at a time, I have to make sure I've selected that text box that has all those bullet points in it. You'll know that it's selected because it'll have those little, you'll be able to see the box with the little squares around it. And then I'm going to put in what are called, transitions. And to do that, the little, it's called the Build Inspector, and it's a yellow colored diamond that looks like it's flying. And if I have that one selected, it'll be blue. You'll know that it's selected because it's blue up on my toolbar there. And then I have to do 2 things. I have to tell it to have an effect. The effects can be really fancy. I kind of like to minimalize my effects. I don't need my students getting sidetracked with bouncing words. So I always just click appear. But if you want to, you can have all sorts of interesting effects. So the 2 things I want to do here, I have to choose an effect, and then at delivery, I don't want to do all at once. Maybe you do. Most of the time, I want to do it by bullet. For anybody who's advanced, there's this more options thing, and you can get all sorts of weird with that. The first one spin, the second one balance, and the third one have music and sound effects. Under delivery. Oh, we just popped up, but you can do it. So don't listen to Sherry if you have the text inspector, which is right next to our transitions inspector. Okay, are we on time? Okay, so that's the very, very, very basics of setting up a presentation. Are we kind of there-ish? Let me keep going. Then, here's the part that's cool. On my inspector, I want to click on this far left little, it looks like a page with a turn corner. This is where I can set it to play automatically if I want. Personally, I don't find this as beneficial as the record tool, but if you want to, you can play around with this to get it to record automatically. The way that you would do that is where it says presentation, there's a drop-down box. I'm on normal mode, which means I have to be clicking it to get each bullet point and each slide to progress. You can choose self-playing, and it will self-play. It has some defaults about how fast it moves and how fast it presents each slide, so how fast the bullet points come up and then how fast that stays between. So you could look at it and see if that's okay. And then if you notice right underneath the self-playing, it gives you transitions and builds, and it tells you seconds, the number of seconds. So if you wanted to slow down, you would just tell it to take more seconds to build this slide. If you wanted to speed up, you would decrease the number of seconds. Okay.
So this applies to the whole presentation?
Mm-hmm.
Or
yep. And you can go in and, so if you're if you play around in that inspector where I said that you can do that drawer, back when we were doing the presentations, where it says more options, you can play around with, you could have one bullet pop up and then 5 seconds later another one comes up and then 2 seconds later 3 pop up, and you can really get specific, but it takes a little more time.
Christy, to clarify what Lori said, so when you selected one slide to set up for how you want your bullets to move, that applies to your whole presentation? Or do you have to do that
Thank
slide?
you. Actually, when you set up one slide, it doesn't apply to your whole presentation, but the easiest way to get it to start applying to your whole presentation is set up your transitions when you build one slide, and then instead of adding a new one, if you do a right mouse click and say duplicate, it'll give you, what I have now are 2 slides that are exactly identical, including the transitions. And so this is what I usually do so that I don't have to set up the builds on every single slide, and this is true when I do it in PowerPoint too. I just create a duplicate slide, and then I can go in and just, oops, change what I want it to say, maybe. But it'll keep the transitions.
Right.
It'll
So
keep those bullet
So the
points
text
coming up.
comes later, you just set up a blank slide with the transitions first?
Yep. Well, or I usually just create mine one slide at a time. I'll start my first slide, get everything done on it, and then I'll say duplicate this one, and then I go and just change what I want on the others. Now I'm going to show you, this is the part that I think is the coolest, is you can just go to, if you go to your first slide and click record, what it's going to do is it's going to start presenting. It's going to go full screen and blow that up, but it's also going to start recording my voice. And so if I were presenting in class, I could, and you can see the little, what's up there? You can see up in this left corner that it's recording, and it is picking up my voice. That little audio bar is telling it it's picking up my voice. Oh, I think I have mine on autoplay right now, don't I? If I were going to do this, I would probably want to make sure, so I showed you how to do, oh, I know what it's, okay. Christy, how do you get the record button on? Oh, is it not there?
No, but if you go down, I found it, if you go down to play, then you can do record slideshow. But mine's not on the toolbar either.
Okay,
There must
and
be some preference.
part of that I think is, and I forgot about this, originally I had to go to my toolbars. In Apple you can create your customized toolbar and you can tell it what you want there and what you don't want there. So I will have to remember how I did that. So where did you find it?
Under play or under file.
Okay, so under play it
Under
has
play
record
or under
slideshow.
Keynote. No, not under Keynote. Where was the other? Or
Play
under
or
file.
file. Record slideshow. Okay. Okay. Now, if I'm going to do, that, I want to make sure it's probably not on self-play. I want to make sure it's on my clicks. Okay. I'm recording again. Okay, so it's recording, and then I'm going to click to the next slide, and it's still recording me, but what it's doing is basically creating a movie of what's going on my screen with my voice. So if I were talking through a lecture with the kids, I could actually create this whole movie for them of the PowerPoint plus my voice, and I could talk through each point, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I didn't create those bullet points to pop up one at a time on my second slide. So those all popped up at once. Once I'm done, it just stops recording. Okay. Do you want to try that one? Do you want to experiment with it? What do we have about?
We have about
10 minutes? Okay. Would you like to experiment with that once, or do you want to see next step?
Next step.
Next step. Next step is going to be under Share. I can export this. And I have some options here. And this is probably the biggest reason why I like Keynote over PowerPoint. QuickTime will allow me to take that little recording that I just made and turn it into a QuickTime video. QuickTime videos are pretty universal. They can be viewed on Macs, they can be viewed on PCs, they can actually even be viewed on most of the mobile devices now, iPad, phones even, so they can see them from pretty much anywhere. You can upload them to YouTube and create a link, or you can just keep it as a video. You can actually turn it into a PowerPoint. If you are a hardcore PowerPoint person, you can do it that way.
Can you go the other direction? So if I already have a PowerPoint,
Yes. What you'll do is just open up Keynote and say open a file, find your file and open it, and it just pops right in. Now I haven't experimented to see if it brings in every single little feature and nitpicky thing, so if you have a really complicated one, I would love to hear how much of that transfers over. But the basic PowerPoints, absolutely.
you may hear it through screaming.
That'll be fine. I like to hear it. You can create a PDF, which you know what a PDF is, yes? Just a file that can't be edited, but a visual of the screen by screen by screen of your whole presentation. So that could be something that could be used if you had notes on your presentation. You could easily send it out as an attachment to students on email, or put it on your website, and then they can download it so that they just have access to just the screens. So that's your PDF. Images, if you create images, it creates an actual picture file for every single slide. The only thing I've found that beneficial for is if you want to take a certain slide and put it like in a movie, or if you were creating a podcast in GarageBand or somewhere else and you wanted to put it in there. I don't find that one to be the most beneficial. I think HTML, if you have your own website, you can actually copy the code to embed the entire presentation in your website. It's pretty cool. And iPod, I really don't recommend iPod, because if you do it as a QuickTime, you can actually access it through iPod anyway if you use the regular medium size file. Okay, so let's say we want to take this movie and send it out to our students. I'm going to export it using QuickTime. I do want to make sure, and it'll default to this, but I have to make sure I'm using the recorded timing if I want it to actually play through with my voice. And then I just click next, and that's it. I title it. And I put it somewhere where I can find it again. Of course not. This might be because I have a huge amount of movies on my computer, and I think I actually have run out of disk space, so I've had trouble keeping my movies here. I have to go delete some. Yeah, that would probably be my problem. But you should be able to do that. And then, do you want to experiment more, or should we talk about how to get the movie to the kids? Get the movie to the kids. Okay. The easiest way, this is how I do it. Now, I don't know if you notice, this little app on my desktop is called Dropbox. And that's one way to share a file with kids, but your kids have to have Dropbox too. But Dropbox allows, like the other day, Nicole wanted me to have her sub-files, and for some reason they weren't attaching. So she just shared them with me. She just went to her Dropbox and said, I want to share this file with Christy Colby. You can actually do that, and you can share full file folders with all of your kids simultaneously, but that's a whole nother workshop. The easiest way is to share a movie is probably just through YouTube. So you would go there. You do have to create an account. And once you create an account, and it's pretty simple to create an account. Once you create an account, it's as simple as I want to upload a movie. And I'm just going to, I've already created that file on my computer somewhere. Let's say, now I wasn't actually able to create the file because my computer's full, but I'll go find one that I have. Okay. Well, I would just select that file and start to upload. And it does take a little while. You have to kind of sit there and it takes a little while. But then the easiest thing to do, once I upload it, it'll give me a URL. It'll give me a place on the website where I can just send kids to view that. And when you go to upload, it'll give you the option if you want to make it a public movie, or if you want to make it completely private, or if you want to make it available to anyone with a link. And that's the one that I always choose. What that means is that nobody can find it if they go looking for, if they search YouTube for certain things. My video is not going to pop up in their searches. That somebody would actually have to have that very complicated URL to be able to access it. But I can send that to my students either through an email, I can put it on my website, I can give it to them any number of ways. And then anybody who has that URL can see the video. I've created just a few. I've used it, for example, like when I'm gone, I'll have something that I want to teach the kids, and I can create a video and just let the sub play the video instead of me actually having to be there. So sometimes for presenting new material to the kids while you're not in the classroom can actually be possible. Putting out really important lectures when the kids are gone, so that students who are absent can access that information. Or just so that students who maybe sat through the lecture but didn't quite, or lecture, interactive lecture of course, who sat through the information but didn't quite grasp it the first time can watch it a second time and even stop and take notes while they're watching it, because it's a movie, so they can push pause and work it through that way.